Well, good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and it must be Wednesday. It must be 7 o'clock Mountain Time because we have another Concerned Parents of Canada Roundtable tonight, and it's going to be a doozy. We're going to be discussing how you can take the power back from the school boards and get yourself elected on the school boards. And tonight we have some great guests. My co-host, John Mihalich, has done a whole lot of work on this here in Edmonton. So we're going to actually be talking about what happens here in Alberta, but it is fully applicable across Canada. And the reason we're choosing Alberta tonight is because on October the 18th, everybody goes to the polls for city, municipal, and school boards. So we're hoping we can get people motivated here in Alberta and across Canada to get and go and take over their school boards and take back the power into the parents' hands where it belongs on their children's education. Anyways, well, let's get started. Let's bring John in, my co-host. So, Mr. Mihalich,
Yes, sir.
I'm guessing you will have a lot to say tonight.
Yeah, I've been doing some research the last few days on this particular topic, and it's been quite disturbing. I've had to take a few breaks with the information I've been finding out because of mental overload and what our reality is for our kids and why society has evolved into what it is today. Things are certainly not like they were when we were kids, where we would go to school and, learn Common Core math and actually be credited for getting the answer correct. And in the current system, they want you to find the way to get the correct answer. You don't need the correct answer. You just need to find the way to get there. And that's credit enough for you. So essentially what this does is it stops children from thinking. There's zero critical thinking now with our kids in school. And it's a shame, but there are some options out there for us to do things and to try and have an impact on this so that we can change it by becoming a school trustee in your community, city, town, anywhere. The process is really not that difficult.
Before we get going, John, why don't we bring our other guests onto the roundtable tonight?
Yeah, sure. Let's do that.
Okay, go for it. I'm sorry. I got to have some fun with you. Being the co-host, we have to go back and forth. Tonight we have Shari Strong coming in from Children's Health Defence Canada. And Paul Klaszus is with us tonight as well from Warrior's Sword, I believe it is. Warrior's Sword, is that correct, Paul?
Freedom Sword, yeah.
I'm sorry. Freedom Sword, I'm terribly sorry.
It's all good. It's a brand new site, so not everybody knows what it is yet.
And I'm not sure if Shari is in the green. Here she is. Wonderful to have you too, Shari. Thank you for coming.
Great to be here.
And we're going to Shari, the other Shari as well. But I've got two Sharis on tonight. It's always wonderful to have Shari Strong on, but the new Shari is new to all of this, and she's going to mute her camera tonight. She's a little camera shy, which is not a problem, and she'll speak when she feels inclined to do so. So, being a new person on here, she's going to watch what happens, and then she'll be able to pipe up when she needs to. Thank you very much. John, back to you, my brother.
Yeah, I think what I'd like to do tonight is maybe let's throw some questions out on people's viewpoints, including you, Doug, on what's your opinion of our current curriculum in our public school systems. Let's hear some viewpoints for our viewers, because I'm sure that we all think a little differently about it, but everybody's kind of on the same page. So what do you think, Shari?
Well, based on what I'm hearing, I don't have kids in school right now, but what I'm hearing from parents who do have children in school, I'm not impressed. Not only that, my own research of actually looking at what's the content of curriculums. Look, if I was a teacher making my living and I had a house here where I held my classes here and I taught the curriculum that's being taught in schools, and if it was under any kind of level of scrutiny, I don't think that I would be in business for very long.
Yes, agreed. It's interesting, the stuff that these teachers get away with, and I understand that these are their careers and they want to keep their jobs, but at the end of the day, there's a right and there's a wrong. And I feel we've been going down the wrong path for quite some time. How about you, Paul? What's your viewpoint on?
Well, I've been a huge advocate for self-governance for quite some time. And what I'm seeing happen within the school system is really actually quite tragic, because not only do I see a difference in the way that I can communicate with people who are graduated, say from 10 years ago, or even when I graduated, it's almost like it's even like the vocabulary is so much less. But not just that, just the way that people think, critical thinking skills are down. And if you take a look at the standardized tests that have been, part of the education system for, ever since I was a kid, 40 years, it's getting worse all the time. And if we compare the education system that we currently have with, say, something in Finland or, something anywhere else, really, we are not keeping up. In fact, we're very quickly falling behind. And, it's something has to be done. And of course, as something that I'm very passionate about, self-governance, it has to be done on a local level. You can't say, oh, we need to bring change from above. No, we do it at home with our schools where our kids are.
Well, and really, it's to get this whole idea of getting people involved with their school boards is to get the power put back into the parents' hands. Now, here's an unusual request. Our producer, Mr. Ed Jamnisek, would like to come in and chime in on what we're talking about. So, Ed, take it away, my brother.
Just a quick, brief life experience that I had. And this is going back to 1998, 1999. I'd been out of high school probably 12, 13 years at the point, and I had to go back for retraining due to a accident. I got into college, taking machine shop and general machining at the college level. The math that we were getting first, second, third, and fourth semester was stuff that I had done in grade 7 and 8 and 9. And I was horrified. The kids didn't know how to do basic math. English level, the first time I was in college, my teacher told me that I should be a writer, not a technician. And so 4 semesters in community college, I was a straight A award-winning student. In high school, I was barely a C student. So if you think things have gone bad, and this is being out of the system for 12 years, and then other people that I'd worked for, this would be going 2007, 2008. I had to do grammar and spell checking for university graduates. University graduates, and me, a C student. Okay, that's how bad things have gotten. Well, that's all I got to say.
Thank you, Ed, for that. And it really has gotten a lot worse, ladies and gentlemen. And this is why tonight we want to talk to you. And I'm going to bring this back on, getting back over the target here, is for you to take these school boards back. And most of the time, the people that sit on these school boards run unopposed. In other words, they don't have an election. They just get the seat back the next time for the next 2 or 3 years, or however long the election cycle is, and then it goes back. And that's why they're always the same people on these school board trustees. So nobody opposes them. And how powerful is the school board? Well, they mandated masks. The school board mandated masks. They mandated social distancing, and now they're about to mandate vaccines for your children. The problem is that the school board has enough power. It's not that that they should mandate masks, but they should allow the masks to be the power of the parent. If the parent wants to mask his child or her child, that's their right to do so. If the parent wants to vaccine their child, that's their right to do so. Teachers need to teach. Principals need to mandate or do the rules that the school board sets out for them. Now, I'm going to give you a quick story. Back in the early 90s, I worked as a substitute teacher, and I also volunteered for the breakfast and lunch programs at elementary schools to help out because they didn't have a lot of volunteers to do that. And one day I was at one of the elementary schools and we finished up the breakfast program, and I was up at the principal's office, and she had a friend over, and we were chatting, and the school was about to go on strike. The teachers were about to go on strike, and I suggested that what they may need to do is why don't we test the children to see if they've learned anything from that particular teacher. And if the children get a certain grade pass for these tests, and so that they've learned something, the teacher would get a raise. And teachers that don't teach your children and the children fail, they don't get raises, and they go under review for their teaching skills. I didn't realize that I was sitting in the office with a reporter from the local newspaper, and I made headlines the next day because she wrote the story that teachers should be, their raises should be based on how well they teach how well the students learn. Anyways, my substitute teaching career ended at that point. But the reality is that the parents need to, and you have the right to take control of the school board, and hence take control of what your children are being taught, how they're being taught. I remember out in Ontario, under the what was her name? The Liberal government, anyways, a few years ago before Doug Ford came in. The premier of the province hired a convicted pedophile. The man was convicted pedophile to write the sex education program from kindergarten through till grade 12. And then they tried to institute that in the schools. And basically what he had written for the kindergarten through grade 8 was grooming for pedophiles. They were grooming children, or at least that's what the sex education would have if it was ever actually implemented. Doug Ford won the next election, and the Liberals, I think they only got 2 seats, and the party ended in Ontario. But he got rid of it right away, and I applauded him for that. That was very well done on his part. But the problem was it had already gone to the other provinces. And last year, being here with John, his son, who was 9 years old, was going to be taught sex education. We got to look at this document, and lo and behold, if it wasn't the one out of Ontario, they've been instituting it here. I mean, it was changed a little bit, but and John's young son went to one of those classes, and he actually had to leave the classroom. He was horrified by it. He's a child. They don't think about sex. They don't want to know about sex. They just want to be children. And why would the school board institute these things? And why would the parents allow that? So tonight, I'm going to give the microphone back to John, because he's going to tell you all how to get elected. So I'm going to pass this back to John. You go ahead and explain how they could go ahead and
Thank you, Doug. Well, one of the ways that we can start to make a difference and start to get things back on a positive track is to run for school trustee, public or Catholic division of school. It doesn't matter. It's really not much of a process to do. You just download a application, essentially, fill it out, where you need 24 or 25 electorates to sign and say that you will make a great difference and we support what you're doing. They just have to be eligible to vote. Now, there's a bit of red tape involved with this. There are a bunch of rules that can make you ineligible, but they're pretty minor. I mean, most people don't have a lot of the problems. I read through half of them tonight. Costs for this, it costs you $100 to go down to City Hall to register. That's it. You need to create a campaign bank account, which you can self-finance for as little as $200, $500, and then collect donations throughout, right? Which can't be from any political party or any politician or any government body, essentially. They can't endorse you whatsoever. So there are rules to follow. You will have to read and see what's involved. But to get on as a school trustee, you will have a direct impact on what's happening, what's coming down the pipe, and what our future holds for our kids, right? It's quite interesting that really there's no one there to debate them. Everybody just seems to be going along with whatever's in, you know? No one argues right and wrong anymore. And, thousands and thousands of us are taking a stand and standing up to this. Well, this is another way that you can do that. It's not a full-time job. From what I understand, it's a meeting once a month, which you get paid for, and it's not an astronomical amount of money, but your foot will be in the door, right? If you can't, even if you don't have kids, think about your nieces and nephews and their futures, because we got to do something. And Paul is absolutely right. We've got to start at the local level. We've got to get our foot in the door at a local level where we can start making a presence, arguing these points. Another interesting thing I read in this research the last couple of days was pedophilia hidden under anti-bullying campaigns, and how they're grooming our children through these campaigns. And it was quite interesting in how in-depth they got with it. Suggestive posters, we have kids as young as kindergarten, and the teachers in this education system is teaching them that it's okay to be a boy and it's okay to be a girl. And it's okay if you want to change that. There's no repercussions. You get to decide what you want to do. And I do not agree with that whatsoever. In this world, there are males and females. You're born with the package you got, and these are the cards you're dealt with. And just because surgery can change that does not mean it's right. So we got to get involved more. Is there anything else anyone else had to say about our current education system and other serious interests we should be looking at as well?
Go for it, Shari, please.
Good evening, everybody. Two things. One, I think that it would be beneficial to, at the very least, find out when the trustee meetings are and whether you have access to view them. A lot of times they're run during school hours where people are working and they're live, but they're not saved and found out later. But that's certainly a request you can put forward to the schools. And if you don't want to run, at least you can then view and see what's happening. And you can certainly reach out if you don't agree, or if you do agree as a parent, right? Secondly, from being in the schools for the last several years or more, I should say, one thing I noticed that was really prevalent, that actually shocked me at first, was the amount of people that are in and out of the school with their own, I guess, agenda. Alberta Health Services is always there. Dentists, consultants, behavioral people, all sorts of people coming in wanting to, I guess, drop off brochures for on-site field trips, all of these things that have to be. At one point, I remember looking around thinking to myself, when do the teachers have time to teach? There are so many people in the school that really have nothing to do with education. I mean, it's become a community hub. And for obvious reasons, I think sometimes, the road to hell is paved with good intentions, as they say, right? And for some groups of people, it's very necessary, but it does take away a lot of educational time and hours. And I think that's something that should be looked at as well.
Well, and ladies and gentlemen, as the parents take over the school boards and you get elected to the school boards, at that point, you can then reschedule them to be in the early parts of the evening, where you would encourage other parents to participate in the process and voting and so forth, and on different issues that you might want to put out to a vote for the audience, et cetera, and see what the feel is for that, or put out notices that you're going to be discussing certain items at this particular school board meeting, and get them sent out to all the parents across the district that your school board is in, so that you get a full meeting. A lot of issues that go on in the schools are easily rectified with the parents' input. And I was talking earlier that masking, for example, is an easy rectification. Rather than mandatory masking, voluntary masking. But let's ask the parents what they think, rather than have the edicts come down from on high to people that have been on that school board for God knows how long, and are entrenched. It's time to dig the ticks out of the side of the deer and put people in there that actually care about the children. Well, who cares more about their children than the parents? And that's, I think, would be the way to do this. Let's get involved and let's get there. And even though, okay, let's say that you don't get elected to the school board or you don't want to participate in that side of it, start going to school board meetings and start having a voice at those meetings. And don't take no for an answer from these people. They're there to hear you. They're not there to tell you what to do. They are public officials. They're public servants. Remember that. They're there because you pay them. Anyways, Shari, go ahead.
Thank you. So I have a little bit of a thing I'd like to add to that, because it's kind of late in the game and some serious things are actually happening in schools right now. My sister's granddaughter came over yesterday, and it was her first real day of school. And she said there was at least 3 teachers who played sometimes 2 videos on getting the vaccine in each class. So by the end of the day, she'd had at least 8 videos played to her about how she should get her vaccine. So what I'm seeing in schools right now is there are teachers who are taking children aside who are unvaccinated and separating them from the kids who are vaccinated and having them stay at lunch for a little indoctrination education talk. Okay, so my concern is that, yes, run for the boards for sure. Absolutely do that. But in the absence of that, I think we need to stop asking for permission to people to stop abusing our children. So if I invited your kids into my home and they came home at the end of the day and I had told them to sit in their chairs with their hands in handcuffs, and if they tried to wriggle out of their handcuffs, I shamed them. And if they somehow got out of their handcuffs, I sent them upstairs to speak to, my father, someone who's like the principal. Okay. And your child came home and they were feeling, ill effects from the handcuffs rubbing on their hands. And they were feeling shamed and bullied and pressured and coerced and restricted. I don't think it'd be long before I had a few parents showing up at my door and saying, stop doing this, let alone sending them back every day for a year to actually be subjected to this. So these children are being indoctrinated by people who actually have an agenda. They're either brainwashed or they're genuinely concerned, but they're definitely speaking out of turn and out of their wheelhouse. It is not their job to be convincing our children to get vaccinated. It's not even your children's job to make that decision. And so my belief is that we need to stop asking for permission, and we need to start, as Paul, Paul's a big advocate of taking our power back. If they're not going to listen, I think it's going to be much more powerful for us to actually teach our children ourselves. And a lot of people are scared about that, but there's so many different options for homeschooling, or like Paul's partner has a wilderness school. There's so many different things that we can actually be doing. But one of the themes we're getting with Children's Health Defense is people are ringing up and they're saying, please help me, but I don't want to leave my name. How can you help me? How can I get an exemption? All that kind of stuff. And we're at the point where, some people within Children's Health Defense are getting 1,000 emails a day that they're having to go through. And we're saying to them, no one's coming to save you, that you actually have to save yourself and you have to save your children. And we have to stand up for our children. Run for school boards, absolutely. But understand that there's also some politics behind it, and it may not be so easy to get in the first time, and we may have a lot of children lost through the cracks in the meantime.
If I could just intervene for a minute, Shari, it's very interesting that you're saying they're showing these videos to these kids, because recently, about a month ago, I came across another document from the World Health Organization that clearly states if your child is in attendance at public or Catholic schools, it is their tacit consent to be vaccinated, which means they don't need to ask mom and dad. They don't even need to ask the kid. They've already agreed to it just by being there.
Yeah.
And I'm going to get on the YouTube chat right now and post the link to that document, because the dots just connected for me with that big time. I just heard you say that. I'm like, what? Really?
Yeah.
I'm doing everything I possibly can to keep my child out of public school this year. And I'm still not quite sure how I'm going to work it all out yet.
But you know what? Sorry, John.
We're connected with Paul and a group of very wonderful people for educational purpose for kids, right? So it's an option. Wherever you are in this country and this landmass known as Canada, there are options out there. You do need to do a bit of research. You do need to start socializing, meeting people, and finding the context to get something happening. Get your kids out of the school system. Sorry, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to quickly say that you don't have to know what to do, but in the process of figuring out what you want, you will find out. You'll find a way. So with that, I yield, Paul.
Well, here's what I find very interesting. The qualifications for you to run for the school board are this. You got to be over the age of 18. Here in Edmonton, you got to have a residential address here in Edmonton. And thirdly, you've got to be a Canadian citizen. That's it. That's entire qualifications. You got to pay $100. You need 25 signatures from your neighbor to run. And then there's a bunch of other little things if you haven't paid your taxes or you're in bankruptcy that disqualifies you. But then most parents are homeowners. They're usually up on their mortgage. Their taxes are well paid in advance, and they probably haven't been bankrupt if they're still in their house, which makes you fully qualified. You're over the age of 18. You're a Canadian citizen, and you're a resident of the city or the municipality that you live in. And you probably got $100 that you could find to go file and get 25 of your neighbors' signatures on the form, because these people run unopposed, ladies and gentlemen. They run unopposed. So oppose them. Enough is enough. Take back. And what knowledge base do you need to run a school board? Well, you're going to learn the same way they did. The only reason that they do it now is because they've been there for some of them 10 years and 8, 9, 10 years. I mean, my God, the power has always been in your hands. Take it back. Go ahead, Paul.
Well, this is related to what Shari Strong was saying. You know, the stories that are coming out of the schools are that's horrendous, to be honest. But you know, there are other stories as well, and I know that the other Shari also shows that. And I'm getting a notice saying that my video gets frozen, and I'm not sure why that would be. I've got a really strong connection. I'm just going to continue.
Well, try turning your camera off and back on.
Yeah, sure thing. Try that. Nope.
Try turning your camera off for a few minutes and just talk.
Okay, sure thing. Yeah. So the what we're seeing are, I got to relate it actually to a battlefield. Hundreds of years ago, thousands of years ago, if we were on a battlefield and we were against an opposition, people would send out a messenger. They would say, go run back to town, run back to the city, and let them know where we're at. Let them know what's going on, because we're not going to win this. Okay, we're going to lose this war. And if you can get home fast enough, you can prepare people for what's coming. And so those messengers would run. They would go back to their home city, to the capital, and they would tell everybody, the enemy's coming, and here's what it looks like from my perspective. This is what I saw. And they relay the strategies of the enemy. They relay the formations that they liked. They relayed how many archers they were. That's how they got the message back to their hometown, their home country, their capital, to get ready for when the enemy shows up. Now, the battlefield looks different today, but without a shadow of doubt, I'm sure we can all agree, we are on a battlefield. It just looks different. And, a story like what Shari shared, and what the other Shari I know can share, because she has she's shared with me what it is. But I mean, on top of that, you take a look at what just recently happened with Project Veritas and the expose that they made in the school where there was a teacher who was literally admitting on camera that he had 180 days to turn his students into communist revolutionists. He got busted saying it. And then when Project Veritas went to the school and said, hey, we've got a concern that one of your teachers is not really following the rules here, that turned into a massive movement of parents going to that school board meeting, like what we're talking about here. They all showed up and they said, how dare you? And the only reason you're saying sorry is because you got caught. That's the kind of power that is available to us by simply stepping forward and taking some action. And I can guarantee you that if we don't, the enemy is headed for our city. And we've been given the warning. We've been given everything that we need to get ready for when that happens. And there's still time. That's why all of this is so important.
And by the way, the gentleman was fired as a school teacher.
Yes.
He also admitted that there were 2 or 3 other teachers doing exactly the same thing in that school. There is now a big investigation going on there. And then another teacher came out on TikTok. Southern California teacher came out on TikTok, which was kind of funny. And she bragged about taking down the American flag. So when they did the Pledge of Allegiance, they did it to the rainbow flag. And that went viral on TikTok. And then after that, she went to school, or went back to school to get her stuff, and they told her to clean out her locker. So they're self-sabotaging themselves. But the only reason they are so emboldened to do these kinds of things is because the parents aren't involved. And this is why we call this Concerned Parents of Canada Roundtable. It's because we want to give pertinent, proper information to you, and not preach at you, but teach you how to get involved and how to take back your power that's always been there. You've just got to get off the couch and get out the door and say enough is enough. Go ahead, John.
It's interesting, with even a small group as us getting together and the horror stories and information that just us 5 can find. It's, wow. My brain is itchy ban. It's crazy. I know the other Shari did want to say something here, but I'm not sure if we could hear her because I haven't heard her speak yet. Do you want to try and get in, Shari?
Hi, can you hear me?
There we go. Perfect. Go ahead.
I just wanted to say that, parents can go into the school anytime they want, and they can be in the classroom. They can volunteer in the classroom, especially in the lower grades. I mean, it's not something that's, there's no rule against that. So more presence there, and that's going to help with these types of situations as well, right? And I'm sad to hear that has been happening, the alienation and the videos on getting the vaccine and things like that. Like, I'm sad to hear that that's happening for sure. That's not good. But if parents are concerned, they should be sending emails, making phone calls, and showing up in the classroom.
It's interesting you should say that, because pre-COVID, I'll tell you a little story here. Pre-COVID, my ex and I are not together, and we have a son together. And when he was attending schools, she would volunteer, and I don't think at any point she was ever allowed inside the classroom. Even though we're technically allowed to be there, not all schools are reading the same rule book. So depending on who you talk to and how that principal is with the teachers, and every school has a different atmosphere, right? Some are real friendly, some are just not. But I can tell you from experience that my ex was not allowed to attend in class to watch what my son was doing.
Wow, I guess you're probably right in saying that every school is run differently, but there's volunteer forms, and you get a child welfare check, police check, and any school I've ever been in has allowed it. So my daughter's included. I was there every Thursday from kindergarten till grade 6. I was there in my daughter's classroom, and multiple other days in kindergarten and stuff like that. So, I mean, I guess that speaks to the school, and that's part of your decision making when you enroll your child in a school, whether or not they're going to be open or not to you, right?
So Ed has put up a question. Actually, it doesn't really have any application to what we're doing here tonight, but I figured I would put this in there anyways. S201 is the gene bill that was passed, I think it was 2017 here in Canada. And it has nothing, the bill itself was designed for DNA testing of human beings. So if they took your genetic DNA and they tested it and they came back to you and said, "Oh my God, you have MS as part of your DNA or some other deadly disease," the bill was designed to protect that information and not be shared without your permission to insurance companies, to your employers, et cetera, et cetera. It actually has nothing to do with PCR testings because they're not testing human DNA or your DNA. Hence, what they're doing in these PCR tests are supposedly looking for viral DNA. And so that S201 is not applicable at this time. Anyway, just wanted to get that out of the way. Sorry, ladies and gentlemen, we'll go back to our discussion.
I just wanted to read this paragraph from this article that I found because I find it quite interesting in how applicable it is to this conversation, especially when we've discussed how kids are not critical thinking and essentially they have stopped their thinking process because they really don't need to think anymore. They just need to learn how to get there, not to actually get there. So it was really interesting. It's a short paragraph. Because indoctrination happens in the absence of thinking, many teachers who engage into indoctrination do so unconsciously. They themselves take what they're given and pass it along without thinking. Ideologies often intervene at this level by writing scripts for teachers, which is how LGBT advocacy and anti-Semitic fabrications became included in their lessons. So it's all part of this plan to not get our children to think so that they can introduce LGBTQ, introduce gender transition, introduce all the stuff that kids shouldn't even be thinking about. You know, my boy is 10 years old. He doesn't want nothing to do with girls. So bad that even I'm not allowed to have a girlfriend. Right? So when we think about the mindset of our children and what's happening to them, they're being conditioned to be ripe for the pickings, essentially, for this liberal mentality. And this is why it's so important that people like us on the panel and all of you people watching do something to get involved. The problem with Canada is people are not standing up and doing something. We come on here, we educate, we bring information to the table, but we still have such low numbers of parents that are willing to stand up regardless of the consequence, if there's one at all. How do you know? Because you haven't done it. Go ahead, Shari.
Thank you. On that note, with Children's Health Defense here in Alberta, we're wanting to organize, Sunday we have our first meeting to help organize Mama and Papa Bear groups. So we want to bring out the Mama Bear and the Papa Bear in parents to actually stand up to protect their children. We suffer in this Canada from the fear of being nice or the fear of not being perceived as nice. When I lived in Australia, people would often confuse me for being an American. And I say, I'm actually Canadian. They're like, oh, Canadians, you're so nice. And I'd say, yes, it's our national export. And so we're known across the world, but we're also known, internally for, almost this peer pressure to be nice and not actually speak our minds. And it just requires us to follow that internal compass within ourselves. Courage is not the absence of fear. Courage is acting in spite of fear. And one of the best and easiest ways that we can do that is to not act alone, is to find parents, start talking to other parents. There are teachers out there who feel the same way as you. Find those teachers who are sympathetic, who don't want to wear a mask all day, don't want to impose masking on their children. don't want to be part of the propaganda process, and other parents too. And when you come together and you act together, and then you start to inform and educate one another, and then, you know, we start to build it this way. Right now, they're trying to separate us in our silos and not talk to our neighbors. Like in Australia right now, it's actually mandated not to speak to your neighbors. And that's what they'd like, because if we're not talking to each other, we're alone in our silos, and we're less likely to act and take action to defend ourselves, and in particular, defend our children.
I couldn't agree more. If only we could clone ourselves, Shari.
Well, we're not any more special than anyone else. We're just following our internal compass.
You're right.
And, you know, some of us are used to embarrassing ourselves, or you know, we're not afraid. But you don't always have to be the leader either. Like, no leader completes anything without a mass behind them, right? So you don't, if you have some courage, you can actually speak to someone who has more of a leadership role. Not everyone wants to be a follower. So we can have lots of groups. You know.
Well, there's dominant people in all groups, right? So that's right. I mean, if you are a follower, there is someone in your group that can help speak for you. If you show up as a group and have a speaker for that group, they're going to listen to the speaker that represents the group. So it's not like you're going in this by yourself, right? You got backup. And there's thousands of people that are on the same page as you. And people need to start saying something. These people that I'm involved with, I've been asked to advertise. She's having an annual garden party, a fashion show and auction on September 18th. So if you are in Edmonton, Alberta, or Leduc, or Morinville, or Red Deer, or anywhere surrounding Vegreville, Hinton, please come and support these people. These are the people that are starting to help our kids. Doug and I have both been associated with them for about a year and a half now, and they are a wonderful bunch. And we need to give them all the support we can to keep them being able to do what they're doing, which is helping Canadians, helping children. So please, Ed is supposed to, yeah, there it is, www.glowwild.ca. Send them an email. Say hi. Have a look at their website. It doesn't cost you anything, and especially to come to this annual garden party. You know, I'm not sure what the details are for the party, but I'm sure if you send them an email, they'll get back to you, let you know what's happening. And yeah, let's support them. It's time to get off our butts. Summer's almost at the end here. We're almost done. Now we're going to be back into winter. Lockdowns are coming. It's time, people.
Well, and John, the other thing too is there's a lot of different homeschooling things that people can do out there, but there is an additional cost to the working mother or the single parent. Even if two working parents, there's an additional cost to send them to a homeschooling event. Whereas if they took over the school board and started to institute proper teachings within the schools, you wouldn't need to homeschool your kids. You take your power back. You bring teaching back to the schools that you want your kids to learn. Critical thinking, how to figure stuff out, meritocracy. Instead of every kid getting a trophy, oh, how wonderful it was, you know, but let's get back to meritocracy. If you got an A and you got 98% on your exam, you should be darn proud, and your father and mother should be darn proud. And the kid that got 36% on his exam and a D, you don't beat him up. You don't be belligerent with him. But there's an opportunity there to make him rise up, because now it's a meritocracy. The people in class, everybody is now shooting for the top of the pile, and it lifts everybody up. Instead of saying, okay, well, everybody's going to get a trophy for this, and we're not going to mark these papers A, B, and C, and D. We're going to just put no marks on them at all. Job well done, everybody. Well, that brings everybody down. That's communism. Communism doesn't lift the proletariat up to the middle class. No, it makes everybody poor. That's all it is. It brings everybody down to one class, and you're all dead poor. Well, the same thing happens with this diversity, and everybody's equal and all this other wonderful stuff. You were born. What was the line from the Declaration of Independence? All men are created equal. Okay, you're born equal. As you go through life, some people accelerate at different things. Brain surgeons are created, nuclear physicists are created, but car mechanics are created. And we're all needed. And it doesn't matter whether you're a nuclear physicist or whether you're a car mechanic. It all is this. At that point, a nuclear physicist can't fix his own car, where a car mechanic can't do nuclear fusion to create electricity. So everybody has their place, and everybody tries to be the best at what they can do. You have a great world. Failure is the best thing that can happen to children, because if you fail, you'll learn from your failures. You don't learn from a pat on the back, even though you didn't pass the exam. That just puts you on the couch in front of a Game Boy, and you're living in your mother's basement till you're 45 years old, and she drops dead, and they come by and seize the house because you haven't made any mortgage payments, and now you're living on the street at 45 years old with no skills. That's what that gives you. This guaranteed basic income is absolute foolishness. I don't understand how people can fall for this crap.
That's exactly what I was going to bring up for a point too, Doug, is, if we look back as little as 15, 20 years ago, which was about when it started being implemented, that you don't need to win. You just need to show up. Everyone's a winner. And I remember looking at these events thinking, this is the weirdest thing I've ever seen. This is like Twilight Zone stuff. And now it's evolved, and have a look at what our society has created.
Well, and let's hear from Paul on this subject, if you don't mind, John.
Yes, please, Paul.
Are you still there, Paul? Well, maybe Paul's gone.
We may or may not hear from Paul.
I'm here. Sorry, I just forgot to unmute myself. Yeah, well, I don't have much more to add to that. I mean, what we're experiencing as far as that collectivism goes is exactly that. It dumbs everybody down. There's no incentive to actually do a good job. Why? Because, well, I can just sit back and get my A by showing up. It is detrimental to advancement. And every time this has ever occurred throughout history, and it goes back, you can see the patterns of school systems. You can take that back in history 2,000, 3,000 years, for as long as we have any kind of comprehension of how the education system worked. As soon as you take away the incentive of winning, and you even encourage the complacency, society falls. It's not like the kids get dumber, although that is certainly the case, but society falls. The nation crumbles. That's the consequence.
Thank you. It looks like we're coming up to the top of the hour here, but ladies and gentlemen, you want to see what your future is. Mike Judge made a movie back in the early 2000s called Idiocracy. You could probably watch it on Netflix or Amazon or whatever, but please go watch that movie, because that's the future that's coming. It's almost here with what's going on now, but not quite, because we don't water our plants with Gatorade as they do in that movie. That's not a spoiler, by the way. Go watch the movie. You would really enjoy it. In a laughing way. It'll give you a good chuckle, but then you'll think about it afterwards and go, "Oh my freaking God, we are on this road to idiocracy," and we truly are. We're coming up to the top of the hour. I'm going to go around the table now for closing remarks from our guests, and I'm going to start with the beautiful blonde lady. Shari Strong.
Thank you, Doug. I just wanted to kind of give a little tidbit of information. I know someone who works here locally. Her brother works here locally. And when she asked him, he's working on universal basic income. And when she asked him if that would be dependent on getting the vaccine, he said, I cannot disclose that information. So he said that to his sister, which a lot of us have suspicions. So it's not a big surprise that it's actually going in that direction. And I think if we've seen anything in the last 18 months, things are moving very, very quickly. And if anyone wants to join Children's Health Defence Canada and form Mama Bear and Papa Bear groups, parents who are wanting to defend their children and actually fight from within to protect their children, we'd love to hear from you. I personally would love to hear from you.
Thank you. Thank you for joining us tonight, Shari. I'm going to turn the microphone on to the second Shari. Any closing thoughts, Shari?
Well, first of all, thanks for having me on. And I would just say to anybody listening that look for groups that are like-minded and join together and start fighting this thing before it's too late.
Thank you for that. Paul?
Well, again, thank you for having me on here. It's always a joy to work with you. It can't be stressed enough that this is crucial. It's important that we start taking action. Get off the couch. If you're not happy with the way things are, you're going to have to start making some changes. It's the same thing that happens with our health, same thing that happens with our relationships, same thing that happens with our finances. If you don't like the way things are, you're going to have to get up off the couch and actually do something about it. And I know that sounds a little bit harsh, maybe a little bit rough around the edges, but it's the truth. We know enough about history to know that what happens when you don't take action in situations like this. It's evil prevails when good men do nothing, and that includes women. And it's absolutely wonderful to see what's going on. There's a lot of positivity that's happening, and now we just need a few more people to come on board with us in the same direction. And one last thing, I promise, it's not really a plug because I don't get any compensation for this, but glowwild.ca there, they have set something up and they've got a system down, and they're pretty much maxed out with how many sons and daughters they can have in their school right now. And what we're doing is that we're expanding out and saying, okay, that's about as all we can do for this community. But now it's up to the other communities. If they want to do something like this, they're going to have to take action and start setting something up for themselves. Now, whether that's going to the school board and taking that route, or if it's if you want to do something that is alternative schooling, there are options there, and they have all the resources to help the parents that are in your area. And there are packages available, so you can contact them on that site, and they will show you step by step, even like what you need in place to make it happen, so that your communities can also have a school that is all about freedom, it's about entrepreneurialism, it's about it goes back to it's about performance. The losers lose and the winners win. And the great thing is that they stress that losing is not the end. That's just a great turning point to learn something new. So anyways, that's all I wanted to share. It's important that we come together on this, and yeah, please reach out. If you don't know where to start, you can reach out to us. Like, leave a comment in the comment section. That's how we know whether or not you're interested. Get involved, and if you have questions, ask, because we can help you.
Okay, thank you, Paul. Any closing thoughts, John?
Yes, Doug, another wonderful roundtable with action-packed information that everyone has at the touch of and stroke of a keyboard. With as little as spending an hour on your computer actually doing some research, and I wouldn't recommend Google, more like DuckDuckGo. You can find out all kinds of things. You can find out what's happening in your community. You can find out how you can get involved. Like we talked about earlier, you don't need to be the advocate for your group, but you need to be in a group. So it's time, Canada. Let's get together. Let's get her done. Love you all. We'll see you next Wednesday.
Thank you very much, John. Thank you, Shari Strong and Shari and Paul for being here this evening. It's been wonderful. And once again, I just want to thank our audience for being a wonderful audience that they are. Without you guys, we're just speaking to an empty room. So it's always lovely to have you. Anyways, I'm going to get Ed to play us out. Thank you, Ed.
There'll be blue skies when the chemtrails are all gone. There'll be blue skies are all gone. There'll be blue skies when the chemtrails and there ain't no contrails. Blue skies when the chemtrails are all gone. You can stick your coronavirus up your arm. You can stick your coronavirus up your arm. You can stick your coronavirus. Stick your coronavirus up your arm. Sing it, we are the 99%. Sing it, we are the 90%. Together almighty, we are the 99%. You can stick your poison vaccines up your arm. You can stick your poison vaccines up your arm. You can stick your poison vaccine. Stick your poison vaccine. Stick your poison vaccine up your arm. We are the 99%. Sing it, we are the 99%. Sing it, we are the 90%. Together almighty, we are the 99%. I'd rather be a human this way. I'd rather be a human than a slave. I'd rather be a human. Don't you know that you can rather be a human than a slave? We are the 99%. Sing it, we are the 99%. Sing it, we are the 90%. Together we are mighty. We are the 99%. You're up your arse. You can stick a new